Hello everybody, my name is Naya and I'm the Black female engineer. I provide content for new and aspiring software engineers, and today we're going to figure out which is right for you, front-end or back-end development. So let's get to it. So let's start out with what these two people do. Front-end development is responsible for really everything the user sees and interacts with, while back-end development works extensively with databases. Everything that the user saw and the elements they used, they worked because of the back-end developer. So a typical day in the life that you can expect of the two, we'll start with front-end development. A UX UI designer has a meeting with their project manager, and them two work on how to revamp a site, an app, or how to create a new one altogether. They figure out how they would like the layout to be, how they would like the user experience to look like, and after they wrap up, they bring that report or they bring their findings and everything to you, and now it's your job to bring their vision to life. Now, moving on to a back-end developer, the back-end developer, their manager may go to them and say, look, we need to make sure that our site is running as fast as possible, and we need to make sure that our search results, that they are as accurate as possible. So let's say you work at some type of shopping company. And so what really they'd be asking for is, let's make sure that users, when they input in their search box, black top, black shorts, the proper items pop up for them. And so yeah, those are the 2 days in the lives you can kind of expect of the 2 different developers. So now let's move on to technologies. So a front-end developer is pretty straightforward, the things that they are expected to know or learn. They need to know HTML and CSS, start there. Then they need to learn JavaScript, and then finally some type of JavaScript framework, typically React, Angular, or Vue. That's really it. That's really all there is to it. I mean, the languages themselves, they are a whole thing. But in terms of what to learn and what to know, it's pretty straightforward, which is not really the case for back-end developers. Back-end developers, they have quite like a slew of options in terms of what languages they're expected to know. It kind of goes down to personal preference or what the company themselves use. So this can be anywhere from Python to Ruby to Java to C#. It really goes down to preference. And so I recommend kind of trying out the different languages and seeing which ones you resonate more with and going from there. Now, on top of a language they also need to know some type of database. And so really the most popular 3 options are MongoDB, MySQL, and Oracle. And so yeah, these databases are responsible for, like, let's say a user creates a profile and they have their first name, last name, age, email, all of that. That information is stored within a database. And so that is why that is just such a pertinent part of the role. Next, let's talk salary. I remember when I was going through this process, I was pretty shocked to see quite a salary difference within the roles. So the 3 locations we'll look at for salaries are New York, Toronto, and London. So starting with New York, front-end developers can expect to make about $89,000 in New York City, while back-end developers can expect to make an average of about $112,000. These figures were taken from Glassdoor, all of the figures were, and you see this big difference. This stays consistent throughout the different locations. So let's move on to Toronto. In Toronto, front-end developers can expect to make $70,000, while back-end developers can expect to make $83,000. So not as big of a gap, but still a pretty considerable gap. Now going to London, front-end developers can expect to make 49,000 euros, while back-end developers can expect to make 62,000 euros. And so pretty consistently, back-end developers make more. Now, why is that? Well, back-end developers do obtain a lot more risk than front-end developers. A mistake made by back-end developers is much more costly than a mistake made by a front-end developer. A back-end developer mistake can cause the site to crash. It can cause, hackings. It can just really create a slew of problems that can take a long time to resolve and are just so costly to the company. While a front-end developer, they don't really have that same risk. Even if they do, and when they do make mistakes, it's nothing that would be as high caliber as the back-end developer typically. I mean, tell me if you're a front-end developer and you made your whole building blow up because you forgot the color of a back. I don't know. But yeah, it's really not as costly. And so, the greater the risk, the greater the reward, but at the same time, heavy lies the head that wears the king's crown. So you kind of need to look at these things. But the back-end developer may be the right place for you, especially when we look at personalities. So the personalities of these two developers, we'll start with back-end. A back-end developer is seen as more of a problem solver, minded person. If you've liked puzzles all your life, that is a good sign that you'll like back-end development. However, the personality of front-end developers is very detail-oriented. You're perfectionists because you care about the look and feel of your project, you care about the aesthetics, and you care about, design and just the ability to be more creative. One thing I read was that front-end development is for people who have always wanted to be designers but never learned to draw, which is actually really funny because when I was 6 years old I wanted to be a fashion designer, and so I find that really funny because I love front-end development. That is just my niche. Put me in, coach. That is where I belong. But where front-end developers are very detail-oriented and make sure that things look pretty, back-end developers, they just want things to work. They do not care if they had to throw things onto the wall. As long as it works at the end of the day, they will sleep just fine. And so, yeah, those are just some considerations to make in looking at which is right for you. Don't forget to subscribe, especially if this is not your first video. It really helps me out, supports my channel. And let me know which you're considering more. Are you more front-end or are you more back-end? Or do you like a little bit of both and you really don't care, and what would be the deciding factor for you would be the salary? But I hope you liked this video. Please leave a thumbs up if you did, and I'll see you all later. Bye, y'all.